Advertising is dead. It's all business now. And one of the core components of a modern day business is the focus on growth. How fast can you grow? How wide can you grow? How far can you grow? But how do you train growth leaders without maybe giving up your secret sauce? Can it actually be a scenario, or can you actually ever look at a scenario where growth leaders come together in a community and learn from each other? That's the hypothesis behind which the company GrowthX started. And today, one of their founders, Abhishek Patil, on the show. And there's a ton of insights in this episode in terms of how the future of growth leaders or other growth leadership can actually be built when they all come together, learn from each other, and truly enable so much more of this ecosystem to grow and evolve. All this and more in this week's episode of Advertising is Dead, where we talk about all things business. I'm Varun. Right back with my chat with Abhishek. Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're talking to Abhishek. Abhishek, welcome to the show. I'm excited to do this chat.
Super excited, Varun. I think been waiting for hitting the record button on this one with you. Super excited, first as a listener, now coming on the show and talking with you. I think it's been interesting ride.
When I first heard of GrowthX, and I found the model intriguing because while obviously EdTech is this vast ocean of a lot of things happening, this felt very razor focused on a specific need, primarily for people in leadership across product growth and founders. I want to ask you, how did this kind of start off? How did the journey of building it out start?
Interesting. I think let me give everyone background on what GrowthX is, because few of them might not know what GrowthX is. I think GrowthX started off as a community for like founders, operators, mid-senior folks, right? A great analogy that we typically give is imagine if like LinkedIn, Zoom, Quora had like a baby together. That's the product, but for business as a function, right? Because that helps people understand what the product is. I think 2019 when GrowthX started, it was like a 8-week boot camp that we launched. Now it has evolved into a whole 1 year long experience. Most members come from marquee companies, very internet businesses, right? Razorpay, Google, Flipkart, Canva, you name it, and we have it, right? We have a challenge called Name a Startup in the Ecosystem, which is in top 100, and you will find a leader or an operator in GrowthX, right? Typically, people who join our strategy, founders office, product managers, marketers, 35% of the members are founders. And very interestingly, 6+ years of median experience. So it's a very mature community. It's not like somebody getting out of college and learning just paid marketing or SEO and jumping into GrowthX. That's not possible. I think the way we think about GrowthX is we are building currently the whole upskilling platform, but we are also thinking of building whole networking, mentoring, hiring, also like building async tools and frameworks. Also build, like, as I said, like a Quora for product growth and later expand into business as a function, and also help these folks do really good branding in the whole process. It could be internal branding, it could be social branding, whatever that is, right? And I think all of this currently is built on like pure no code. What we are doing is now completely productizing it end to end. Now, how did we arrive here, right? I think very interestingly, when I was at Dunzo and my co-founder Udayan, he was working at Razorpay, we both were in growth teams, right? And I think a lot of this came from the fact that we were facing a lot of growth problems while working at these companies. And we were scrambling, we were helpless, to be very honest, on figuring out, hey, kya chalega? What will work? Right. Yeah. And I think what will work led us to jam with a lot of interesting people. So I still remember, Varun, you are from Bangalore, so you will know this. There's a third wave coffee roasters in 4th block, Koramangala, which is like a very interesting place. There's a lot of freelancers come in. Yes. We used to go on Saturday, Sundays and just bring 4 interesting friends every week. And we are like, ki bhai, tera growth problem bata mere ko dekhna hai. Like, how are you solving it? So we had somebody who used to sell to, like, there's a guy who works at Potfix. He used to sell it to Fortune 500 companies. Udayan was, my co-founder, was working on long tail of small and medium businesses. I was always in consumer internet, right? And what ended up happening is we understood that a lot of our problems are solved in another domain, right? And we just have to go and like maybe become a sponge and understand the framework, why it works for those domains. And we said, why restrict it to just like 4 or 5 friends of us, right? We went to LinkedIn, we went to YouTube, and we said, cool, let's invite like 6 people. Let's throw a pizza Coke party on Saturday. Spend 6 hours. We designed a structure. We said, everyone has to come there and define what the growth problem they are solving right now. And we will all brainstorm together and create an experimentation list. And I think this was insane because we used to get like 50 odd people applying every Saturday morning, and used to pick like 5 people out of it and jam with them for 6 hours. This essentially changed the ball game for the people who were coming to these conversations, because they were getting a lot of solutioning and diagnosis at the same time. And we said, okay, let's keep doing it. GrowthX was not even called GrowthX back then. We were just doing this for solving our own growth problems. And what ended up happening is this scaled to 50 plus additions. And we had this beautiful place in Richmond town called the Bohemian House. We used to go there. We used to just do jamming, right? After doing 300 plus community members there, I think we had two core insights. One, even the best of the best people lack structure to growth. And second, everyone craves to solve problem statements together. And I think that was the holy grail of our insight, right? So everything that we have built at GrowthX is peer-to-peer led. So every experience has a peer-led experience. And second is everything has a structure. We have a joke, which is you can't come on GrowthX community and just post anything. You can't do that. There's a structure to even posting and asking help, right? And I think one of the fundamentals that we have maintained is, even when we are saying we are built for internet businesses or things that are sold on the internet, I think we're very, very focused saying this framework could also be applied to a corner chai wala or pan shop, right? So the rules and the frameworks are omnipresent. You can apply them to anything absolutely on business, but we are laser focused right now on internet. So that's how GrowthX started, to be very honest.
Do you think the gap also kind of came from the fact that I don't think growth is really taught? I think a lot of the other fundamentals are kind of, thinking it could be when you're in university, it could be when you kind of start off. I feel growth is something you kind of learn on the job. Because the markets evolve so quickly, and I think the growth function by itself is something which, if you feel that you know how a certain segment works from a growth perspective, it could totally change in the next 3 to 6 months, right? What it requires, etc. I think about so many D2C people I speak to now versus when I spoke to them about a year ago, just how they talk about performance marketing, right? It's North Pole and South Pole in terms of how that works. And I think of so many other pieces that are part of it. Do you feel the gap kind of came from there, or do you generally feel this works even beyond growth for functions in all businesses?
Very interesting question. I think, okay, let me say this. Growth is the most misunderstood concept out there. Yeah. Either people feel growth is top of the funnel, or growth is equal to running an ad, or growth is equal to doing some random hacks. We actually launching a t-shirt at GrowthX called "Growth is not a hack." Literally, we're launching a shirt like that, right?
Hallelujah to that is what I would say.
I think the idea with growth is, I'll actually break it down, right? I think there are 4 components, right? 3 or 4 components. First component is really nailing down with your team what is your North Star metric, which is dhanda kidhar se aayega. Which is, correct. Is it paid customer? Is it revenue? Or is it something random other shit? Get that straight. That's first part of growth process. Second part is, where are you and where you want to go on that metric? And being realistic about it. Third, what all impacts that particular metric in your organization from the time you do not acquire a customer to the time that they come on your product and start experiencing the product and refer, pay for a subscription, etc., right? List them down and ask yourself, what are the core levers that will make a huge dent on that North Star metric? Now prioritize and say, okay, how much effort is required to move this metric by whatever? We have a thing called, just pick all the metrics you have. If you double them, the input levers, where will you land on the revenue? Simple. Ye math kar do. Okay? You will get a prioritization from there, and then apply a RISE framework. What has lower effort? What will take less time, etc. What kind of skill sets do you have in the team, etc. And I think after that, you will have core things that you need to solve for your business. That will definitely improve your North Star metric, revenue, most probably. And after that, you launch, okay, I want to solve, you mentioned D2C, right? I want to solve repeat order rate, right? Somebody bought Damage and they want to figure out why people are not repeat buying. Now just try to understand difference between people who bought that Damage ka product and who did not buy it as a repeat customer. Yeah. What are the different behaviors that they exhibit on the product, off the product? What is difference between unka औकात है क्या पैसे पे करने का? Did they get an aha moment? How did you acquire them? Was it a discount? What was the price point? All of that, right? Did they had a bad experience with the delivery, or the product quality, whatever. And once you understand this, you will have a list of hypotheses. You're like, यार ये चमका नहीं है user को, इसलिए convince नहीं हुआ वापस buy करने के लिए. Or that you don't even have a use case, right? And after that, you launch hundreds of experiments to understand, okay, cool, how do I get this user back? And 80% of the time you spend understanding why they are not coming. And 20% you execute on launching experiments on that funnel to understand कि वापस कैसे लेके आए user. I think that is growth, right? If you think that one hack will get you like some insane growth, I mean, you're operating with luck. You're not operating with a structure that is repeatable, right? So yeah, I think I answered it. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
No, you did, and you gave me a few more pieces to kind of take from there, right? One of the other aspects which I find super interesting is the assumption would be, and I feel that's thankfully been broken by just the fact that you have been able to get so many people on, is that people don't like to share their secret sauce, especially growth, right? Growth is the one thing everybody wants to say, okay, no, I have figured it out. I don't want to share, right? Which is the assumption, because you've always been told, right? Don't give away your secrets of growth. But here it's like, okay, let's all come together. I will tell you how I'm growing. You tell me how you're facilitating growth. So I will use your methods and you will use mine. Seems almost like, utopian. Like, oh, everybody is being like, this is like one happy family scenario. But because that's not what you're always seeing in perception. So when you look at the core community, what have you kind of learned since you started it, and which kind of surprised you about just how much people kind of were willing to share and learn and also unlearn from this whole thing?
I think one of the experiences is on the first 8-week experience is getting over this Sunday, right? And I was reading everyone's feedback forms. I read every feedback that gets submitted. Even like one user submits feedback 14 times during the first 8 weeks, and I read everything. And one of the keyword that constantly comes up is unlearning and structure. And I think I have few things, right, on that zero sum game, and then whatever negative sum, positive sum, whatever all that bullshit is. I think fundamentally the next Google Pay scratch card experience is not going to come by copying what Google Pay scratch card did. The gamification is not going to be coming from copying that. What is definitely going to come is, what is the distilled framework? Google Pay did it because the average order value on GPay for P2P, peer-to-peer, like me sending it to Varun, was less than 100 rupees. They also had a perceived value of shopping behavior and making money behavior of Diwali. And there was also an insight that most of the customers would do anything for a 250 rupees reward because the average value of their transaction is super low. And that framework got them to do that whole Diwali campaign, right? So you going and copying just as is not going to help. So even if all the things are on the table, you still won't be able to figure out growth. Let's admit it. That happens. And one of the things that we do at GrowthX is week 1, when any community member gets onboarded to the community, we definitely speak to each of them and tell them, put off your guard. This is a safe place. Come discuss everything, because this place will help you way more than you can add value here. We call GrowthX as the matrix, right? We have, I think now I have lost count, but we have, I think 1200 plus tech companies in India and abroad. 6% are international. And imagine this, you want to partner with anybody right now in India. They are one Slack message away. So what are you worrying about? Who is going to copy it? Because we have, like, if you take D2C, right? We have like a lot of D2C brands. Kya hi copy kar loge? Or copy kar bhi liya, so that's not the edge anymore. Because everything is out there on the internet. What will matter is how brilliant is your insight about your own user. I also have this experience with, like, while working on Dunzo, right? I always used to think about that, hey, a Swiggy product manager should not be speaking to a Zomato product manager because they might copy each other. Bullshit. It doesn't work that way, because the Swiggy user is going to have a different journey in the product than a Zomato user. The UI is different. The acquisition, the way they are acquired are different mix. The marketing pitch is different. The selection of hotels is like restaurants is different. There's so many things that are changing, right? Delivery times are different. They're gone to a different experience. Zomato user has come from a restaurant discovery to ordering, while Swiggy user started with onboarding, like ordering food, right? So I think fundamentally you cannot copy one product insight directly into second. You will have to understand the framework and then execute brilliantly on it. And it's not easy. Like, you can't just pick one insight, execute, and you're all done, right? It's going to be a very grueling process. I hate it when these all YouTubers and everyone go ahead and say that growth is do 5 things and you'll be growing. I mean, itna easy hota, to why are we getting paid so much? Right? You could just write a Google script for it, right? Why would you get a human being to do it? So I think that's fundamental to why everyone is so open. And I think we also have done that whole education to the user, right? Which is, I'll give you an example. We have somebody who's like a very well known. He's currently a chief marketing officer at one of the Aditya Birla's verticals, right? And he's in GrowthX. He has 18 years of experience, a veteran in FMCG, and then got to Aditya Birla. And I was jamming with him in one of the GrowthX offsites that we have every 6 months. And I was like, I asked him, why did you join GrowthX? Okay, you did the 8 weeks intense experience and now you're a member and you're like crazy active now. But why did you do it? He's like, the insight is not going to come from number of years. The insight for me is going to come from number of experiences I will have with these members, because they are having exponentially higher experiences that I want to learn from. I don't want to waste my time to keep learning them by myself. Right. And that blew my mind, because then I thought, okay, that means age is not a factor of how well you can solve a growth problem. And I think that was mind blowing, right? Because I remember him completing one of the things that we do is a capstone project where we give you a real world product and then we ask you to work on it in a team. And what ended up happening is he had somebody who was younger than him leading that team, and he learned from that person. I think there's some interesting insights that are happening with the right structure and right removing the whole guard that we have, right? Like we have this coverings on us, ki hum nahi sikhenge. Like you will not learn from like people younger than me, or somebody has a lesser title than me. All of their go away when you join GrowthX. So it's a very humbling experience for everyone. And it has come because I think we've been able to tell people the why of it, right? And I think that has fundamentally changed the ballgame.
And if you look at the initial part for you building this and doing all of this was while you were also still, I think, initially working at Dunzo and then working at Cred. At which point was it a decision for you and Udayan to say that, okay, 1 second, we both, and he was working at Razorpay, if I remember right. And you said, okay, 1 second, we're doing this on the side. This is becoming something, I mean, what was initially just let's kind of jam together became a whole piece. How did that decision happen of like, okay, this is what we're going to do full time. This is what we're going to really focus on. And there's always a bit of a switch that goes off when you move from, I would say, a job to being an entrepreneur. And how was that jump for you and for him as well?
Got it. I think it was hard. I was getting married, I'll be honest. My father-in-law had a 1 hour chat with me when I told him I'm going to do this. My future father-in-law back then, right? So I think it was definitely hard going from like I think both of us were working on edge stuff, right? Like it possibly can be on the edge of what enterprise and small and medium businesses for UD, and for me, consumer internet, right? Like we were growing like mad, right? Like, and I think one of the important thing that made us go with this decision was the GrowthX community. And I'll be very honest, the amount of love that the members showcase. I mean, I'll send you some screenshots in the Slack community. It's insane. I can't even brag enough about it. And I think a lot of them literally used to ask us, so when is this becoming full time? When are you taking GrowthX seriously? Basically, the members are asking us, when are you taking us seriously? And I think one of the important decision points from just impact perspective, do I want to build for just top 1%, or do I want to fundamentally change the ball game for what business function looks like globally? And we always say that we just don't want to do India. We want to do more markets, but we want to do it right. We want to build the depth of the product first before going to more markets. I still remember I had this chat with one of the early investors in GrowthX. He's an amazing, amazing human being who can drill down any conflict of decisions, right? And he's like a mentor to me. And he asked me, okay, you have raised this money. By the way, interestingly, 65% of our funding has been raised by the community members, right? For the first round that we raised, right? And one of the things that he asked me was, tell me what's the wildest dream if this works out? I think the wildest dream is if in 2030, if 100 companies are going public, which are internet businesses, I want all 100 to have founders and leaders coming out of GrowthX. I think that's the vision. There is no other vision. We want to build leaders, period. We don't want to operate like how everyone is operating, saying I'll build a course and do 5 million customers every year. No, I don't think we'll ever serve 5 million customers in a year. I think at scale, we will look like 20,000, 30,000 members ever, right? I think the way we are thinking about this is we truly want to focus on impact than saying how many people are getting in, right? And like I always ask this, right? So I always get this question saying, okay, Abhishek, why don't you scale faster and you could get like 1,000 members next month? Why are you not doing it? I'm like, the whole power of community curation will be contrary to revenue growth, right? If I am trying to get more and more curation, I cannot look at revenue goal constantly. Either I do this well, like I'll always relate it to something that we've seen, right? Because it's easy to relate for us. If Harvard would have thought how much revenue they make every year in the year 1 and 2, that's where we are right now from an upskilling vertical perspective, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been here. Harvard's first 5,000 alumni changed the ball game for Harvard. We're doing exactly that. The first 2,000 members, we call them the OG gang. They will fundamentally, and they are changing it right now. Like every day, we have like 3 to 4 stories where somebody is going and leading a vertical in a tech internet business, right? And some of those stories are going to come in few weeks. We have already shot a lot of them. But I think that's what fundamentally we are focusing on. Again, I'm not sure if I'm riffing or I'm answering your questions.
No, you're actually answering my question, and you actually been giving me. So what I always love when I'm having conversation and I'm like, okay, one second, I can see this also go into multiple other directions, right? I'm like, how many companies do you see getting founded by people who met in GrowthX, which I would say would be one of the things to kind of look at and saying,
yeah,
we met together, we jammed together, we were like when you're talking to me about the young leader and someone who's much older being in the team, I'm like, I see that as a combination that could build a company in the future, right? And could at some point you become that company, not only as teaching people, but also like ending up become a venture capitalist who figures a way to get them funds as well. And why I'm bringing this up is I feel what's the most interesting part is, and what you just said is, it's not about scale of number of people you bring on, which is what I think EdTech's one of its biggest problems is that the focus is always how many more people can we get onto a platform. But you can't razor focus on a category where scale will come with not adding more, but going deeper. And I think that's the most interesting part about the model is that you kind of tapping into people who are at that level and who have reached certain maturity in their function, but also like, because you're going to keep it focused and not as wide, you'll still be able to kind of keep the experience the way it is and maybe expand on that. Would you say that would be a good assessment of how you're looking at growing?
100%. I'll give you an example of Reddit. You go to Reddit, right? Reddit is, let's admit it, Reddit is for nerds, right? And we both are nerds.
I agree.
If you use, right? let's admit, right? Let's admit it here, right? Reddit's one thread is about crypto. The next is about geopolitics. Okay.
Yeah.
The geopolitics people might want to listen to, let's say, Jake Tran, right? Who's like the guy who might get killed, right? Versus the crypto guys, maybe like just Elon, or like the Binance founder or whatever, the Luna crisis, all of that, right? Imagine both those groups getting merged. What would happen? It will destroy value of both groups.
Agreed.
Because they are fundamentally behaving differently. What we feel and believe in is business function is 6 functions. The founder, the strategy, and the founder's office, of course, the chief of staff. And then we feel like product, marketing, analytics, and the OG growth, which is no code, and growth design. These will fundamentally change the ball game from business perspective going forward. We are not going to the engineering side of it. I think the engineering side is solved to an extent, right? We want this community who has very empathy towards each other's problems. See, one of the interesting things that we have realized is, I think somebody said to me in one of our offsites was, Abhishek, I have not built relations, I built friends here. And these friends are going to be with me for life. And people have literally said that my social circle has changed, right? GrowthX, I want it to be a lifestyle. Like I have also heard this from members that GrowthX Slack is the first thing I look compared to my company Slack, like the company I work for. Like I open that first, check, okay, cool, I'm updated, cool. Let's go to the company, let's start work. So I think that's also because of the laser focus. And as I said, the Reddit example, right? Cross communities are like, if you are building a platform and if you have like makeup design, right? And you also have like product, and then you also have like music seekh rahe log, right? They're not going to go well with each other because they're going to have like, they will feel like kya hai? Everyone will feel for each other, ye kya group hai? I don't want to belong here.
Correct.
Belonging will not happen.
I have a ton more questions to ask you, but I know we need to take a break. So we'll take a break and be right back with Advertising is Dead. Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're still talking to Abhishek. I want to kind of flip to the other side of every business that's built, is that how have you gone about building your team? Because while the people you're bringing on to be a part of GrowthX from a consumer standpoint are people at a certain level, etc., teams are generally built with a mixture of people with experience, not so much experience, and so on. So how has your focus been in terms of just hiring the right team? How do you look at it, and how do you look at that kind of scaling out?
Okay, let's admit it. Even hiring for us is hard, right? I think
that's everybody. The number one problem everybody has is hiring.
Yeah, I think there's some jadoo ki chhadi to hire great people, but I think it's also about people product fit, right? We strongly believe that communities are core product, right? I've said this again and again to like everyone that I see in our ecosystem of GrowthX, that community is the core product. Everything is secondary. I don't care about everything else. I care about the community, right? I think one of the important thing that has happened with us is we have learned a lot from how Airbnb's first 40 people were hired, very honestly. And I think one of the things that they did was, firstly, every new hire had a conversation with every team member and everyone had a veto power. It's not about hiring the smartest people on earth. It's also about making a great rugby team. It's also compatibility, right? And because communities are core product, our non-negotiable on hiring is empathy. And if you cannot be empathetic, you shouldn't be here, because what the team culture is going to look like will reflect in the community. So this morning, to be honest, I was in Mobi office and we were shooting one of the great interesting stories of one of the GrowthX members. She leads the US market for them. And she's like, Abhishek, I have one feedback, which is, it's the smallest things that you guys do that makes me feel welcomed and approachable to you guys. Like, I feel like I can ping you and ask for like relationship advice, like personal stuff, because that's the amount of safety I have with this fam. And I think that's been because we have been able to hire. One is from the community itself, by the way. We have been able to hire from a lot of our past cohorts, and like somebody who leads our community is like the OG in crypto communities. Like he was like the OG in crypto, and now he's handling GrowthX community, right? Somebody to design curriculum for IITs. She's now handles all new programs that we are launching, because the current team's weakness is doing academia, like a proper conventional academia, right? And that perspective was not in the team. So we wanted somebody like that. Somebody who absolutely loves killer memes, is like just doing social media. Right. I think it also comes from the fact that we only want to hire for superpower, and non-negotiable is you should be insanely empathetic. If you don't have empathy and you are like the best person on that particular craft, thank you so much, but I cannot get you in the team. I think we are very honest about it. And I think that has made our hiring very hard, because people are great at craft. People have proof of work. People want to come and join the team. But when you do the whole culture fit for not just team, but are they culture fit? Like we won't do this with engineers. I'm not even kidding. By the way, GrowthX engineers don't get a PM to launch anything in the community. They directly launch in the community. So the backend engineer needs to understand how to talk when they get like shitload of escalations, right? I think that has fundamentally been key to hiring. But if like anybody in the audience knows somebody who's like an ST3 and ST2, please tell us. Hiring for them, especially on the front end. So if anybody's listening to this podcast, please check out growthx.club/careers and please apply to the roles that you might find interesting.
You know, what I feel is also something I want to ask you is that whenever I ask someone saying, can you talk to me about where the edtech landscape seems to find itself today and where it's kind of headed, I feel it's too broad a question, because edtech is different things for different companies. But if I look at specifically where you find the position you find yourself in, what are you looking towards for the future in terms of not just internally in terms of product, etc., but just some broader trends for your side of edtech, if I can call it that? Because I feel that you are far beyond edtech, but I think if I just categorize you under that, then what are you looking at as trends for the future?
Yeah, I'll be very honest with Varun, right? I think edtech has been bashed left, right, and center right now.
So much.
Right? So much, right? And I think it's actually good. It should be. Because if you are saying that you are going to revolutionize edtech and get people outcomes, you freaking better be getting outcomes for people. If you're not getting outcomes and charging them bonkers, people are going to go mad at you. And that's what has happened. So it's fine. I feel like this is like the pepper tap moment for grocery as a category that happened, that made everyone's life hell after pepper tap, by the way. And I think we don't fundamentally think we are a edtech product. We think one of the smaller vertical that we'll ever have is upskilling. But I think the most important thing that we'll have is community products. Now we are going to go deeper into community. Somebody who's already on the job, already has the tech skills. What else do they want? And we are going to expand there. And as you said, right, like maybe we'll like partner with every VC on earth and say that please invest in GrowthX founders. Our community will also co-invest with you if you're ready for that. But that's something that we'll look out in like few years, not absolutely right now. But what we are definitely focused on is getting people outcome. Two important things. One, for anybody who's in mid-senior and leadership and founders, help them build a growth team and hire great people and build processes that will get them business outcomes, so grow their career companies. And second is people who are like specialists and managers, get them into breakout roles or help them get the next promotion faster. Somebody starting as a marketing specialist should not spend 10 years to become a CMO. That's bullshit. How do I get that down to 4 years? I think that's what we are focusing on. So we will constantly keep evolving number of experiences for our members and not really saying ki 4 product khareed lo, right? So I think that's the differentiator. We never call ourselves dead tech because we are not. We know that. I think our members also don't consider us dead tech. They're like, GrowthX is pop culture.
Which is why I gave that disclaimer at the start, because I'm like, where do you categorize yourself? Because you're in learning, but you're also in community. And there's so many ways you can kind of go. So I think it's also always a good thing to not have, you can't be put in a box. So everybody comes up with boxes which you can tap into. I think that's always a good thing.
Yeah. I think also community is very qualitative, correct? The way we will keep our score is the outcomes. I think that will keep us in check. So we constantly have to engage the community, but also constantly get outcomes and build products on top of it to get those outcomes.
Yeah. I also have to ask, because whenever there's a co-founder in a business, I always want to ask is, how do you both function? And how does that dynamic work? Because there's always a dynamic co-founders. There's always something to kind of learn from. So how did the both of you end up jumping on this? But how has it been kind of being co-founders, and what have you learned?
Yeah, you will laugh at this, but me and my co-founder met because of our love for foosball. And I am a defender. I'm like a very ruthless player. I'm like very competitive, and he's insanely competitive than me. We used to work at Socrati. Very interestingly, Ashish, who is now president at Socrati and was the CEO at Socrati, he's one of the angel investors in GrowthX. And I think both of us used to play foosball, and that ended up making us friends in the process. And we're friends from 2016, and we constantly used to discuss, like we both used to jam a lot. I used to write content back then, and he used to edit my content. And he's like, "Aisa mat likh, aisa likh, right? Ye zyada chalega, right?" And I think he had exactly opposite skill set as I have. He's a very, very focused on product side of things, and I'm very focused on growth and marketing side of things. And what ended up happening is I gave him super much FOMO about Bangalore and got him back from Pune to Bangalore when I was at Dunzo. Then he joined Razorpay. And I think every Saturday, Sunday was basically both of us hanging out. Right, did not had a lot of girlfriends, as you can imagine, but I think just hanging out in Bangalore and
playing foosball.
Playing foosball in every pub and bar we could get, and I think constantly discussing कि यार तेरे इधर क्या चल रहा है, क्या चमक रहा है, मेरे इधर क्या चल रहा है, right? And I think that intellectually connected both of us, to be very honest, right? I'm sure Varun, it's happened with you, which is a lot of your friends that were your friends few years back, they don't intellectually connect with you, so you feel like left out when you go back to them and speak to them about certain topics. They're friends, but you can't talk to them about every topic, right?
For sure.
And I think that's exactly what happened to us, right? So when we came to Bangalore, none of our friends were talking what we wanted to talk about. They wanted to talk about girls. And I was like, what are you doing? You are freaking 26, 27. What are you doing? Are you 18? Right? And I think that changed my social circle completely. And I started working with brilliant people. Let me admit that, right? I think one of the fundamentals that UD and I both worked with some amazing people. And in that process, we realized that, I think we gel well, right? We used to do videos together. We used to do content. So before like GrowthX became full-time, we used to like produce something together as a project for at least 2 years before that, right? So I think that fundamentally helped us key where I don't need to poke him and where I need to poke him, and the vice versa, and which areas he need to take an initiative and he's good at, and I'm not. Right. And being very, very cautious about it, right? Because we're very fundamentally focused on two different sides of GrowthX. One is UD focuses on everything on product engineering and outcomes. I focus on growth, hiring, top of the funnel, and learning experience. Right. So all these functions talk to each other, but they're very fundamentally different DNA, right? Like growth requires very hustle DNA versus outcomes require very patience DNA. So he's a more patient than I am, right? So I think that's what fundamentally has worked for us. Even our teams, right? Like if you look at product team, there'll be more patient people hired there. Engineers, more patient, right? Versus my team, right? If you tell them an idea right now, like if I text something right now, next morning it will be ready. I'm sure, right? And they're very, very different DNA. And that's how we hire, right? And I think even the first set of folks that have joined the team, they're fabulous. And now they are hiring exactly how we have hired. So now it has that compounding effect, right? You will get surprised. We literally have tasks down to the last hour of the every month for every employee that they have designed for themselves. We have only given them framework, right? And I think that has come because of our complementing skill. Like, for example, structure is something both of us love. And like it's completely fine. This month's goal hasn't happened. Completely fine. But we did not even had a structure on what we were supposed to do. That is bullshit. That is unacceptable. Right. And I think that has made sure that both of us keep constantly evolving on our own roles.
Yeah. And I think that focus on structure and systems, like you said, pays off in the long term. It's fine if a few goals aren't met, but I think at some point that cyclicalness and really like fine-tuning of structures and processes really pay off in the long term.
Just clarity, like people feel empowered. Like I have seen, like I'll give you a random math, right? Just go to LinkedIn and look at companies which are sales heavy and look at the attrition rate. People burn out because they don't have structure and they don't have long-term goals that they feel ambitious about. They feel like a lot of companies have this structure, right? Subah call aata hai, sham ko call aata hai. Bolte aaj ka number kya hua? I mean, that's not going to work at all, because if you do that, then you are optimizing for all short-term goals and every member of the team is going to burn out. So we're very careful on even the team burnout, on how we do it. Like, for example, arranging like a therapy session for the team, or just every 3 months, we literally fly down everyone to Bangalore. We are a remote first company. And 10 days, we ship one project together. That's all. No business as usual work is needed. Just ship one thing together. So people feel also like contributing to stuff, right? And people also feel like, yaar, mera baat bhi koi sun raha hai, right? And I think that is something that has helped really us on that piece.
Yep. Towards the later part of every episode, I ask my guests a set of questions well beyond, and you're a listener, so you know what I'm talking about, well beyond what the...
This is the Varun Digirala's version of Coffee with Karan, correct?
This is not rapid. There is no fire in this. This generally is what I always have to kind of turn around and say, especially considering how Coffee with Karan has been this season. I think we're far away from that context right now.
My God, plus one on that.
But tell me something, what do you spend a lot of time doing beyond GrowthX that and beyond maybe foosball that takes a lot of your time that you're super excited to always kind of jump onto?
I think a lot of travel. I have kept a goal for myself that until I turned 30 this year. Until I turn 35, I want to see at least like one country every 6 months. So I just went to Singapore. Next time going to Greece. I have a roadmap on when I'm going. Even that is blocked on my calendar. And whatever happens, I don't care. I am gonna go and do that, right? And I think other things that take up time is my mom and dad don't live with me in Bangalore, right? Because it's just very different culture for them. So I think a lot of my time also spending just going back to my natives and just spending time with my mom and dad. My dad is 72, my mom is 16. So spending a lot of time with them. I think I take a flight every month to home. And I work out of that house for like 4 or 5 days. That's like a discipline I've done for a long time. And I think that is something that has helped me just be sane and just be connected to my parents. Apart from that, I think in Bangalore, I think a lot of my time goes in just meeting a lot of people. I do something called Saturday breakfast dates, where I randomly ping anyone and I'm like, chalo milte, Saturday morning. You're not from my circle. I want to understand what are you building. And I typically meet founders, right? That takes up time. And of course, like very, very recently married. I just had my first anniversary. So spending a lot of time with my wife, but that takes up most of my time.
Perfect. Anything you read, listened to, or watched recently that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I knew this was gonna come. I'm prepared, and I knew the first question.
And I don't revise these questions. The good part is that it's not like I've ever said, okay, I need to hide these questions. It's like this. I mean, I think that as much as these might be the same questions I've asked now for like 4 years, I think they always give me like people fresh things to kind of tap into. Very
interestingly, I have a very different framework for this. I don't read something because I signed up for it. No. I think I am very observation first. Like a lot of people subscribe to, let's say, a podcast and they keep listening to it. I am very, very low attention human being. I will only look at the title and I will say, okay, is this worth my time? right? So I borrow trust from the title. Of course, it will be from the host or the writer or the author, but my more trust is on the title. So if you look at my reading list, you will find maybe an audiobook का एक episode देखा है, या फिर like एक newsletter save करके रखा है, ये Saturday morning पढ़ना है उसको, right? Or I have learned more from people, because GrowthX is a community, and like I'll tell you an example, right? Last Saturday, I went for a badminton with one of the GrowthXers, right? And he was working on a very interesting problem. And I'm like, मेरे को जानना है तू क्या solve कर, right? And I sat down with him after badminton. I sat down with him for half an hour. I understood the problem. I told him ये चार चीजें करके देखो कुछ होता है क्या, right? And tell me if it works or doesn't work after a few weeks. I think I've learned more from that experience and learning from people than anything else in the world. But of course, like I keep reading stuff that comes. Especially I've like read a lot of these typical books, but I don't endorse any book, because I feel like books and YouTube videos are designed to spend you more, like you for the same thing you have to spend more time on it. And GrowthX, I think, is exactly opposite, by the way. You spend minimal time to learn that particular thing, right? Because that's just the nature of the platform, right? Books, if it's not long, nobody is going to pay 1,000 rupees for it. YouTube video, if it's not long, you don't have 3 slots to monetize that video, right? So I haven't, but I listened a lot to I think Johnny Harris on YouTube, and I think
I love Johnny Harris.
Yeah, and I think right now we are setting up the creative studio. We have set to an extent, but we are still setting it up. So Peter McCannon is like the guru there. So I constantly
you listed literally the people I go to the most, and then if you go to MKBHD, then that takes you down a very bad rabbit hole of like the YouTuber like masterclass of how your studios can be, which is a level of insanity. So I have to stop myself from watching all those videos often enough, because I am in this corner shooting my stuff, and there's literally like at some point there's stuff that's going to be thrown out of my house, because you have random like lights and cameras, and I literally have some 4 or 5 cameras in this house for no reason, and I end up using the webcam most times.
You have been brainwashed by Casey Neistat.
Yeah, I've been totally brainwashed by Casey Neistat. I've actually, he's my like OG person to look at from like what I would consider a creative growth piece for me individually would be. Very similar in terms of mindset but I can't vlog to save my life. But beyond that, I think just a framework of thought is something I really relate to.
But you did an experiment with the vlog thing, right? I'm your OG listener and OG stalker on Instagram. So you did experiment with it. The whole exercise series that you did.
I tried, and I still do that. My exercise series is like my thing. It's been like a work in progress. Now that I've been doing this road to 40, 40 ho gaya. So now I have to like figure out what is it. Is it road to 41 or 50? But I think 50 is too far away right now. Still 10 years to go.
I actually want to take a moment, right? And I actually want to ask you a question.
Yeah, sure.
Varun, what is next for you? What makes you excited about? And I
actually sat down and tried to figure this out, right? And I've never really sat down and done like a purpose exercise, or never really sat down and worked on any of these things. So I actually spent time with a coach today. So, okay, I want to understand this a little better. And I realized that one of the things which I enjoy the most is sharing things I'm learning. And I feel like not just what I've learned, but I'm a constant learner. I'm this like super curious person who likes to learn everything. So one day I learned about biomechanics. The other day, like I've suddenly gotten into mechanical watches and trying to understand how they work. So I ended up buying like random mechanical watches and understanding how the jewels work within that. So I'll go that far. But I feel like there's something to kind of sharing that with the world and seeing what insights people can get with it. I'm extremely focused on mental fitness as an aspect. And I think mental fitness again tracks back to how I look at business, right? And I feel that most businesses are, if you focus on solving a problem, you focus on making people work together, how they kind of join together. So top up there for me is like focusing on how to propagate learning what you know to people out there. But also I'm at a certain stage in life where I do want to put some time aside to like spend more time with family. I'm like a full hands-on dad in that sense of the word. One book down, going to start working on my second book sometime next month. And I enjoy being a creator. I think being a creator has opened up a side of me which hasn't been open in a long time, because I started off as a producer. I started off an MTV channel, all that stuff. So kind of going back to those roots in that sense of the word. I don't know if I have another startup in me, but I'm sure at some point something will kind of come up. I enjoy jamming with more startups than actually thinking of a startup is how I look at it. Like I just enjoy that process a lot more. So I'm a tiny. I call myself a sporadic investor, is how I put it. But I find that it's super helpful, and it just kind of helps me as well to kind of jam with people and understand where they're gonna head it. It's a very like arbitrary response to your question, because that's literally where my head is at.
But if I were to just quickly double click on it, right? Do you see yourself as a builder, as a content person, or do you see yourself like doing different things until you think that this is something that I would do not for the money but for what the joy of the craft, right? Do you think that stage will come for Varun?
I'm already at the joy of the craft phase, to be honest. A large part of all the things I do, like I started writing was the joy of it. I started podcasting because I genuinely enjoyed it. It came off as, can I even do it? Was the question. And now I genuinely enjoyed it, which is why I do like 3 podcasts a week, which is nuts. Most people ask me, why are you doing 3 podcasts a week? So the joy part is definitely a large thing there. I have been a builder for the last 14 years. I think there's a side of me who wants to take a break on the building part in the way I built it, because you literally like 2 people in an apartment grow to like 400, 500, 700 people now. That's another like thing, right? So do you want to jump back into that? Not really sure. If that's an immediate thing, that's really going to be something I focus on. But I feel the joy of it, and I generally feel the ability to do multitude of things, right? I think that's the most fun part. Is that in the morning, can I have like a business conversation with a startup? In the afternoon, can I work on a podcast? Evening, can I focus on Instagram? Night, I'm just literally jamming with a couple of friends who are also angel investors and talk to them about, okay, what's happening in this space? Why are we not getting any more decks? What's going on? And I think it's that mixture that keeps me kind of going in that space. And I now have a small team that works with me on my content. And the idea is kind of expand that up, build more pieces that really focus on. So I have 2 areas of focus. It's like, how can we work better and how can we live better, and somewhere in between bridge that gap. Which is why my Instagram content and my podcast content sometimes very different spaces. So I'm kind of focusing on what can we kind of create to kind of bridge that whole piece there. So that
I 100% agree on the last one. And I think it's an interesting insight for all of us, right? Which is what work on like podcast will definitely not work on Instagram. It seems very different type of audience.
Even the same piece of content, that's the way you say it, the tonality, all that stuff. It's so different. It's super interesting to dig into that from a psychology perspective as well.
Interesting. Awesome.
So my question, which I've actually asked all my guests. No, that's I actually was happy that you asked me the question. It always makes me think, and I'm apologizing for my dogs barking in the background because that's definitely on the mic. What can you put together in an instant?
A good egg omelette.
You'd be surprised that answer has not come up in a long time.
Because that's the
cooking stuff comes that cooking stuff has actually come in much late. Hasn't come in that often recent times. So I'm happy to hear someone say egg omelette. No, I don't think we've ever had egg omelette. We've had Maggie. We've never had egg omelette in like whatever. Like we're close to like 200 episodes now, but we're not close. We haven't.
I'm the lazy one. Maggie can get ruined, right? Egg omelette has very less chance of getting like spoiled.
But I would disagree. I think being a good egg omelette, there's a process to it. You can really go into that. I've gone down the rabbit hole of literally watching Gordon Ramsay videos to understand how to make scrambled eggs and omelettes. Right? Like I said, I like rabbit holes are my thing. And what is generally my last question, which is an evolution of the name of the show itself. Why do you feel this form of community focus for growth will not die?
Oh my goodness. This is an amazing question. Let me actually think, right? Let's take an example. What's the OG community in the world? History of humankind. What's the original gangsta in community?
I was going to say religion.
100% religion.
Yeah.
That's the community which has different facets, and religion has not died. Like it is not dying also. We see that it's not going to die. It's going to keep evolving. Right? But I think this is what we do at GrowthX, to be very honest. Look at religion. You cannot copy religion. You have to look at the framework behind religion. Religion has 2-3 things. One, it definitely always have one protagonist concurrently. It definitely has evangelists who are power users. They're constantly helping that particular narrative to get to new users. And these existing people who are following the religion, they practice the religion. So a community, doesn't matter growth or not, it will not die if it constantly has protagonists that people pay attention to and have insane high perceived value. I mean, I don't want to quote religion protagonists right now. I don't want to name anything right now. But I think one is protagonist. Second, are people getting outcomes
Mm.
when they follow that religion? And third, are you creating insane amount of power followers, if I may, who are constantly bringing new members and helping them practice the religion? That's what will make sure communities won't die. Community operators who will not do this will see their communities dying at insane speed. Think about all the religion that died abruptly, or they have like very little following now, right? Like in lakhs, not in crores in India, right?
Yeah.
Look at the behavior, right? And I think that is the answer to really figuring out why some community will die or not.
Super interesting answer, and I think it makes total sense to kind of like look at it from this lens, and there's so much to kind of unpack on that one, apart from all the stuff you've actually said in this conversation. But thank you so much for coming on Advertising is Dead. We focus on all things business now, and I think it's super insightful, like all the points you kind of touched upon for people to kind of tap into, and can't wait to see what you guys are really working towards scaling, not scaling it from a broad lens, like you said, like depth lens. How this kind of evolves for you going ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Varun. And I'm excited for you to go ahead and enjoy the craft and have that joy. And I think you are going to evolve into someone who wants to do 3 things at a time. But I think you will definitely find that wedge. And I'm damn sure you're going to go deeper into one. Even if you don't know it, it will happen to you in like 6 months. If 2 years back, somebody would have said, I'm going to quit trade. I'm like, are you mad? I would have said them like, are you mad? Are you crazy? Like, I'm on my top game right now. Why would I quit? Right? But I think, I'm super excited for you also on that exploration journey.
Looking forward to it, and hopefully catch you whenever I'm in Bangalore next, or whenever you're in Bombay next.
100% done.
Super.
Awesome.
If you like this podcast and you want to listen to more podcasts like this, head over to the IVM Podcast website or app, or wherever you get your podcast from, and look at all the podcasts that IVM makes. There's some really fun stuff there.